everyone. I hope that you are safe and healthy. So in this video, you'll be learning about proportions. So what is a proportion? A proportion is an equation stating that two ratios in fraction form are equal. So again, it talks about two ratios, that the two ratios are equal. So we can tell if two ratios are equal if their cross product are equal. So for example here, 4 over 5 is equal to 8 over 10. Why? Again, cross product is that if you're going to cross this one out and cross multiply 4 and 10, this gives you, if you can see, if I'm going to do that, you'll have 4 times 10 is equal to 5 times 8. So if you can see, I cross multiply 4 and 10. So the numerator of the first ratio multiplied to the denominator of the second ratio should be equivalent to the denominator of the first ratio multiplied to the numerator of the second ratio. So if you can see here, 4 times 10 is 40, is indeed 5 times 8 is 40. So if that is the case, again, we can say that the two ratios are equal. So how do we use proportion in answering some questions? Well, we can use a proportion by, if you can see here, in our two ratios of the example above, 4 over 5 and 8 over 10, you have four numbers there. But in certain questions, let's say for example, one of the numbers there, one of the numbers would be an unknown. So you don't know the particular number. Well, we can use, as long as the two ratios are equal, we can make use of their proportion to solve that unknown number. So let's take this example here. The average classroom at one school has two boys for every girl. So if you can see here, talking about two boys for every girl. If there are 12 boys in a room, how many girls would be there? So if you can see here, he's asking us, this particular question is asking us, if now you have 12 boys, so how many girls would be there? So again, if you can see here, you can have this ratio 2 boys for every girl. But the question is, if you have 12 boys, how many girls would there be? So one way of figuring it out is using a drawing. So if you can see here, using a diagram, there will be two boys for every girl. Or numerically, I can represent that one as 2 is to 1. Okay? Or in fraction form, that's 2 over 1. So again, 2 boys for every girl. Okay, so numerically we can represent that one. But again, we can use drawing. So now we're given that there are 12 boys. So you're gonna draw each set. So that means for 2 boys, you have 1 girl. To make it 12, I'm gonna draw another set, another 2, that becomes 4. But if I have 4 boys, now I'll have a total of 2 girls. So 4 boys now have 2 girls. Then again, my aim is to reach 12. So I add another 2 boys, adding 1 more girl. So now I have 6 boys. Again, if you can see, you also increase the number of girls. Again, to reach 12, I gonna do 2 more, then 1 more girl. Then 2 more boys will give me 10 boys. Additionally, 1 more girl, that gives me 5 girls in total. And then finally 2 more boys to make it 12. And you have additional 1 girl. So if I gonna count that one, so 4, you now have in total for the boys, you have 12 boys is to, so if I gonna count my number of girls, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 girls. So therefore I would say there would be 6 girls. So if there will be 12 boys, you're gonna expect that there will be 6 girls. Okay, so again, you can make a diagram to solve this particular question. So now, the thing about this strategy is it isn't always reasonable. Because remember that sometimes you'll be dealing with big numbers. So would you use a drawing if it asks how many girls would there be if there are 56 boys? So 56 boys, that's quite a lot. So that's too much drawing. So what you can do is you can set up the proportion. So how do we set up the proportion? So as you have, again, we define proportion as just an equation of 2 ratios that are equivalent. So what we are given is that there are 2 boys for every girl. Okay, so this is what is given. So 2 boys for every girl. Now the question also gives us that there will be 12 boys in a room. So I'm gonna write that one out. 12 boys in the room. But what would be the corresponding number of girls? Okay, that's a question mark. Okay, so if I gonna let X as my question mark, okay, so if I gonna do that, so you now have 2 boys for every 1 girl, and then 12 boys, but again this is x is just the unknown number of, so that would be the unknown number of girls. So again, I don't know that one. So one way of solving is, uh, previously we can say that the two ratios are equal. If we're gonna cross multiply them, their number should be equal, right? So that means that if I gonna cross multiply these two boys to x, the product of that will give me the same value as 1 times 12. So if I gonna do that, I'll have 2. So I have 2 multiplied by x is equal to 12. So in this case, you can just disregard for now the, again, I'm just talking about the number of girls. So I can just deal with the numerical values 2, 1, and 12. So you have 2 times x is equal to 12. Again, according to our definition of proportion, these two products, 1 times 12, must be equivalent to 2 times x. So again, I'm just going to write that one explicitly, 12 times 1. Okay. So now, how do we solve for x? Well, one way of doing that one is, think of a number. So x is the number of girls, right? So think of a number that when multiplied by 2 gives 12. Okay, so think of a number. So x, again, x represents a number. So x, so think of a number, so x would be that number. So the x here is the number that when multiplied by 2 gives you 12. Well, if you can see, that number is, x is equal to 6. Why? Since 2 times 6 is equal to 12. So again, x should be 6. So you would say there are 6 girls in the class. So that's one way of looking at that. Or, okay, another way, so another way is you rewrite the ratios again. 2 boys for every 1 girl is equal to 12 boys all over unknown number, or just gonna use x. Okay, so again, you can make use of uh, making them as equivalent ratio. So what I can do is make equivalent ratios. Equivalent ratios. So if you can remember, so I'm just going to write this one. This is 2 over 1 is equal to 12 over question mark. So how do we find equivalent ratios again? We can find equivalent ratios, if you can remember, by multiplying or dividing the numerator and denominator by the same number. Well, if you can see here, you're given the two numbers on top. Okay? So what did you do with the numerator, or think of a number that you multiply to 2 that gives you 12. So is it not that I multiply the numerator by 6? Because 6 or 2 times 6 is 12. So therefore, I also multiply the denominator by 6. So if I'm gonna do that, it gives me 2 over 1. Again, the equivalent ratio of 2 over 1 is just 12 over 6. Again, how did you get 6? That is coming from the product of the 1 times 6. Again, the 6 number here is the number. Remember that if we're going to multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number, it doesn't affect the whole thing. It gives us the equivalent ratio. So therefore, you would say there would be 6 girls in the class. Okay? So the two ways is applicable, and actually there's third way. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you the third way also. Okay, the third way of doing it is you make use of simple algebra. So again, I'm gonna start with 2 boys. So my ratio, the complete ratio that I was given, and then 12 boys, and again x. I'll just use x to denote that that is unknown. Okay, so what you can do is, again, you cross multiply the numerator of the first ratio to the denominator of the second ratio, and then you cross multiply the denominator of the first ratio to the numerator of the second ratio. So if you're gonna do that, that gives me 2 times x is equal to 1 times 12 is just 12. So to solve for x, you can do you divide this by 2 because I want to solve by x. That means that I gonna separate my x. So that means that I gonna make the coefficient of my x equal to 1. So 2 over 2 is just equal to 1. This is just equal to 1. However, if you're solving for x, whatever you do in the left hand side or any side of your equation though, you also do that one on the other side. So I'm just gonna divide this one by 2 also. So again, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So that becomes just x, or just 1x is equal to 6. So that gives you x is equal to 6. So therefore your answer is the same. So the third way is the more general way of solving this one, especially if the numbers are quite tricky, or uh, uh, if it's not easy for you to actually look for that common number to be multiplied by the numerator or denominator. So the third way is more general, but again, uh, if you just started out about proportion, might as well master first the first way and the second way of doing it. Okay, although in the next or succeeding example, uh, you might be using more the uh, the third method. Okay, so let's take the guided practice here. So Paul reads 5 pages in 4 minutes. How many pages can he read in 7 minutes? So again, here we're given the ratio of 5 pages in 4 minutes. So what we can do is we can write that ratio, that Paul can read 5 pages in every 4 minutes. Okay, and how many pages can he read in 7 minutes? Well, we can write the second ratio as, so if you can see here, what is the unknown is the number of pages. We're looking for number of pages. So if you can see, I don't know the number of pages, so I'm gonna place x. So again, generally it's just x, just represent the unknown number. But if I have 7 minutes, okay, so I don't know the uh my I don't know the number of pages. Okay, however, this is the proportion of this question. The first ratio is the 5 pages in 4 minutes. The other ratio is I still don't know the number of pages in a time of 7 minutes. So how do you solve for x? Again, what you can do is cross multiply this. So if I'm gonna do that, that would be 5 times 7 would be equivalent to, so cross multiply 4 and x, so that gives me 4x. So 5 times 7 is 35. So that's equal to 4x. Well, in this particular case, this is what I mentioned earlier, that you can also do the first method wherein we try to think of a number multiplied by 4 will give me 35. You can do that. However, uh, uh, you cannot get a whole number that is multiplied by 4 that will give me 35. That's quite, again, I'm gonna expect that somehow I'm expecting for uh, fractional value or decimal value, because I cannot multiply 4 by a whole number that gives me 35. Okay. However, what we can do is, again, we can employ the third method. So I have here 4x is equals to 35. So again, I'm just gonna make my first, or my x here, or the 4x here, into x. And to make this one as a value of x, I will divide this by 4. And again, since I'm dividing the right hand side by 4, you also do that one in the other side. So again, 4 over 4 gives you 1. Again, that's your aim always. If you're solving for a variable x or a known value, you make that one, that side, is equal to, again, you take the numerical value in front of that variable. So 35 divided by 4 gives you, that gives you 8.75. That gives me equal to x. So therefore, you would say Paul can read 8.75 pages in 7 minutes. Okay, so that would be your final answer. Paul can read 8.75 pages in 7 minutes. So if you want to check, 4 times 8.75 should give you 35. So again, the two ratios, again, proportions are just an equation showing that the two ratios are equivalent. Okay, so let's take the second example. So 15 dance tickets were sold in 1.5 hours. So we're given that there are 15 dance tickets that is sold in 1.5 hour, 1/2 hour. If this rate continues in 1/2 hour, if this rate continues, how long would you expect it to take to sell 270 tickets? Again, I'm talking about the number of tickets and the number of hours. So remember that if you have 1/2 hour, 1/2 hour is just equivalent to 0.5 hour. Okay, so it's just much easier to deal with decimal in this case than a fraction. Although if you're gonna deal with fraction, that's also okay. So we're given the first ratio, that I'll have 15 tickets for a time of 0.5 hour. So that is given in the question. The first ratio, I know the numerator and denominator, so I'm comparing the number of tickets to the number of hours. Okay, so 15 tickets for every 0.5 hour. Again, I've given that if this rate continues, so that means that I'm talking about the same ratio but different numbers on the number of tickets and the number of hours. So how long would you expect? So how long? How long pertains to time? And then you are selling 270 tickets. So if I gonna set up my proportion there, so I've given that the number of tickets is 270, and the number of hours is unknown. So again, I'm gonna use X. So the number of tickets, so uh, the second ratio, the denominator is unknown because again, I don't know the time that would take me to sell 270 tickets. So again, we can do the same thing as earlier. We will cross multiply the numerator of the first ratio to the denominator of the second ratio. So 15 times x. So you have 15 multiplied by x is equal to, so you have 0 0.5 times 270. So you have 270 multiplied by 0 0.5. Okay. So this gives me 15 times x is 15x, just equal to, this is 135. So this is just 0.5. Half of 270 is 135. Okay. So again, uh, you can choose any of the three methods to solve for that equation, or you can go directly to the third way wherein I'm just gonna solve for x by dividing both sides by 15. So again, 15 over 15 gives me 1. So it gives me x is equal to 15 divided by 135 divided by 15 gives me 9. So this number divided by 15 gives me 9. So x must be 9. Again, and again we define x as the number of hours. So therefore, you would say it would take 9 hours to sell 270 tickets. Okay, so that's all for the proportion lesson. So you can look at the assignment questions posted in the Google Classroom.